So this podcast is gonna go over evidences for evolution. The first one I want to talk about is the fossil record. The fossil record it's a fancy term for any preserved remain of ancient life. So it could be a bone, it could be a shell, it could be anything that was preserved that remained behind over millions and millions of years. Um, Over time, you do form different layers. So, with the youngest layers being on top, and the oldest ones being at the bottom. So, if we really want to look at fossils that existed over 500 million years ago, then we really have to dig deep and deep, just to grab samples. So if you look at this image right here, the top would be the youngest, and then as you go down, there will be less, more older layers, which will result in archaeologists finding older fossils. And what is the whole point of collecting fossils? The whole point is that we are able to see how life has changed over time. So we can also look at the traits that existed over time and how those traits changed as a result of evolution. The other evidence is the molecular evidence. Different types of organisms, humans, monkeys, mice, chicken, frogs, lamprey, which is a basically an ocean creature that doesn't have a jaw, and they all have the same four DNA bases, the nitrogenous bases: adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. The amino acids are similar, not necessarily the same, but they are very similar, and this supports this idea that we and other organisms came from a common ancestor over millions and millions of years ago. The third one is embryology. If you look at the embryos of chicken, so this is a chicken one, and this is a possum, cat, bat, human. Look at how similar these embryos look. So embryology looks very similar during early stages of development, and this also supports the idea that humans and other organisms came from a common ancestor. So embryonic cells do tend to develop in the same order and pattern to produce tissue and organs, which again are very similar to ours. The next one is homologous structures. So homologous structures are basically structures that are the same or very similar in other organisms. So for example, here's a penguin, an alligator, a bat, human. We all have a humerus. We all have a radius. We all have an ulna here. We all have a carpal, even though it's not the same number, but we all have it. We all have metacarpals and phalanges, which is like a fancy word for our fingers and our toes, right? So they're all very, very similar here. So this again shows this idea of supporting evolution. Here's another image of similar structures, homologous structures. Just another image showing that. Another evidence for evolution is something called vestigial structures. Vestigial structures are structures that are no longer used or have lost its function over time. For example, us humans, we have an appendix, which is a vestigial organ that was used to digest cellulose, which is found in plants. So back when humans were foragers, back when they were in the forest and in the wild, they tended to eat more herbs and more greens. And over time, we ended up not using the appendix. So to this day, because we don't rely so much on greens and the forest and whatnot, we lost the ability to use the appendix. So it's just there, it's useless. We no longer use it today, so it's considered a vestigial structure. Another one that we have is our tailbone, and our tailbone is a remnant of a lost tail. All mammals have a tail at one point in their development. For example, in humans, a tail was present during the 31 to about 35 days of development. It is located at the end of the spine, but it used to function. A tail is used to assist with balance and mobility. However, we could still use it because it serves as a point for our muscles to be aligned. It's an attachment point for muscles, essentially. A third one we have is the wisdom teeth. Wisdom teeth were used to grind plant tissue, and we don't need it anymore. So, as humans' diet changed, a smaller jaw is what we developed into, yet the wisdom's teeth are still present. Another evidence for evolution is this idea of geographic distribution. So geography does affect organisms over time. So this is our world today. This is the world back 160 million years ago. And marsupials are basically things like rats and kangaroos. They have pouches. And if you see here, their marsupials cannot swim. So how is it that they went from here to here or here to here? Like, how did it get there? And you don't find these creatures swimming across the Pacific Ocean, nor have they been discovered wandering the Asian mainland, right? So there appear to be no routes of migration between the two populations. How could these marsupials have gotten here from their original place halfway through the world? And we use fossils. Again, fossils tell us a lot. So what the assumption here is that marsupials did not need a migration route from one part of the world to another. They literally rode the continents to their present position. So the lands were actually connected, and then over time the lands separated, and that is why we have these organisms on opposite sides of the globe. So it just shows you that geography can affect, how an organism will develop over millions of years, or how it will change over millions of years. Another example we already looked at are Darwin's finches. Even though they're the same species, if you put them in different environments, for example, in an environment where there's a lot of fruits or a lot of insects or a lot of seeds, they're going to develop different characteristics over time. So their beaks change, and it seemed to have been better suited for their environment. If there's a huge environment of fruit eaters, then the finch is not going to have a sharp beak. It's going to have a soft one or a small one, right? But if one of them eats seeds, then they're going to have really, really tough beaks, right? Another way how geography affects species over time is this idea that if you have two different creatures, like a dolphin and a shark, but they're living in the same environment, they're probably going to develop similar features. For example, the fin. They both have fins. Fins typically function as a way for them to lift, for them to steer, for them to navigate in the water. And as they swim, they achieve stability and they could refine their maneuvering because of that adaptation or trait. So similarities in selective pressure just means the environment, similar environments can generate different animals to evolve in a certain way that is very similar or very common. So, and the opposite is true too. What if you put the same species in different environments, just like the finches, just like the finches. So like here we have a camel. It's living in the desert, right? But a tapir is of the same species, but it's actually they look very different, right? So a camel, for example, a camel's hump right here stores fat, right? The camel uses it as nourishment when food is not readily available. Food's not always readily available in the desert. If a camel uses the fat inside the hump will become limp and droop down. And the hump is not used for water storage, but the camel can go for long periods of time without the water.